morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
That was a cheery way to end the gospel. So, Jesus is very concerned about what's on the heart today. Very concerned about what's on the human heart. We hear that, don't we? Jesus is steeped. We have to remember that Jesus is steeped in a prophetic Hebrew tradition. Set the stage a little bit so that you understand what this heart thing means, or how Jesus was contemplating, and what Jesus was talking about. A rabbi was teaching a class and said, if you study the Torah enough, if you study the Torah long enough and hard enough, Scripture will be on your heart. One of the students said, don't you mean in your heart? And the rabbi said, no, on your heart. Protect your heart. And if God wills, and if you are vulnerable enough to have a broken heart, God's word can go into your heart. Part of the Hebrew tradition, prophetic tradition, that Jesus was steeped in it. He's thinking and talking to the scribes and Pharisees, who he's kind of annoyed at today. Fun fact. There are 556 references to the heart in the Hebrew Testament and the New Testament. The heart's kind of important. I have a program on my computer that counts.
I was going to say.
I didn't count it.
I feel better. Yeah.
There's 492 references to love. 556 to the heart. So this heart thing is important in that Jesus is steeped in this understanding that the human heart is the seat, is the true place of thinking and feeling. Got that? Thinking and feeling comes from the heart in this tradition when these scriptures were written. And Jesus is pointing at those Pharisees, like all good prophets, who raise questions and say to any religious institution, hey, you're doing it wrong, and here's why you're doing it wrong. What are they focused on? What are they focused on?
The rules.
The rules. Well, rules, traditions. It's these traditions of not so much the washing off of germs from your hand. It is the act. It is a private pious act of ritually cleaning yourself. So it's a ritual piety that Jesus is objecting to when he sees them not living into God's law. And Jesus boils down God's law to two things. Love God, love your neighbor as yourself. Everything else flows from that. That's all. We as human beings and as religious people love to put traditions and rules and make things more complicated. And Jesus is saying these two things and these two things only are important. And a third, which we hear about in the gospel, but we also hear about in James, which is act. To act. There's a difference, you see. Jesus is saying, you scribes, you Pharisees are worried about being ritually unclean. Jesus is saying we need to be worried about being sinful. Sinful, and that's a hard word to think about, but in Hebrew, when it's translated, what it really means is not right with God. Not right with God. So how do we make ourselves right with God? It's by acting out and helping people. And there's some examples in Scripture that cleaning is an example where you were never supposed to go to the edges of your fields when you were harvesting. You're supposed to leave the edges for the poor. Imagine that today in the farms that we have. Imagine doing that today. Also, very clear in the early tradition, this Hebrew prophetic tradition of not ignoring, never ignoring the orphan and the widow. Always reaching out and helping the orphan and the widow and those in need. And Jesus is saying to these Pharisees and scribes, you're not doing that. You're worried about my disciples not washing their hands. Now, washing your hands is important. Come on, right? But it's not sinful if we don't do it. What's sinful, Jesus is saying, is not helping those we are called to help and losing sight of that. That at the heart of Jesus' love commandment is justice and righteousness. Right? Isn't it? Being truly prophetic people, living into love, means we're helping people whenever and however we can, whether it's a small effort or an enormous effort. That's critical to being a follower of Jesus, and is at the heart of Scripture. So this, going back to this heart thing, having this love, following these commandments that are on our heart, on the outside of our heart, protecting our heart. Also, in this time period, and we hear Jesus say, come these 12 things that he lists that are pretty vile, that come out of the human heart. By having God's law on our heart, those things can't come out. It protects the world from us, and it strengthens us to not act that way. Going back to what the rabbi said, that if we're vulnerable enough and allow our broken heart to open while we have God's law on our heart, God's law goes into our heart and suppresses those other things and changes us. That's what Jesus is talking about when he's saying, what's on your heart, Pharisees and scribes? What's on your heart? Another way to think about that is that at its root, the care for others is the primary expression of our love for God. By actually living into this care for others, we are showing others that we love God. We're living into actually loving God. It's self-fulfilling. So we have a long way to go, don't we? To live into this justice and righteousness. 1 in 5 children live in poverty. The wealth gap is just growing tremendously. And it seems so simple. Love God. Love your neighbor as yourself. Well, first you have to love yourself. Sometimes that can be hard. But we have a long way to go. And it sounds simple, and it's not simple. And that's why this gospel is so important for us to hear, to remind us that we can make differences by large actions, by small actions. And never forgetting that we are called to love. To love. That's my hope and prayer for all of us, that we can walk out of here with love on our heart, strengthening us to be in the world, making a difference. Amen.
Amen.